I'll write it and we'll do it live.
The music, I guess, it starts my feet tapping and I get all happy inside.
You will not laugh. You will not cry. You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
Would you stop with the damn drumming?
You ain't got no problem, Jules. Then wait for the wolf, who should be coming directly.
You sending the wolf?
I'm just having the time, having the time.
I want all of you to enjoy your cake. So, enjoy.
Drums. I don't like the sound of those drums. An Indian hollered back, he ain't our regular drummer.
Get ready for some fun, folks, because Jason Bittner is in the house. Or better yet, Jason Bittner is in his house from upstate New York. More importantly, he is on the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. Thanks for tuning in. Phil here. Really excited to bring this show to you today. We've done a lot of interviews, but this is our first one that we've done with a straight up hard rock and heavy metal drummer. And it's a good one, man. It's a lot of fun. Jason is just a very fun, affable, easy to talk to guy, which you're going to tell right from the get-go. He's a fantastic storyteller along the lines of Sonny Emery, if you heard that interview from a while back. But in this episode, we talk everything from clinics to education, Berkeley, recording sessions, some of his past bands. He makes a protein shake halfway through. We talk about his current band, Overkill. We do a little home maintenance talk as well. And then, of course, we end up with the Drummers Weekly Groovecast Rorschach test. I'll leave that hanging until you see how he does, but he does pretty well. Let's just say that. So I don't want to belabor the point any longer. As you can tell, got a little issue with my throat today. I'm feeling mighty fine, but it's just the weather change has got me a little bit. So without any further delay, let's talk with Overkill's Jason Bittner. Last week when you and I were communicating, you were saying that you had a clinic that you were doing. Where did you do it, and what were you talking about?
The clinic was at Sound Music in Schenectady, New York, which is basically my hometown music store. I worked there when I was a kid. It was the first music store I ever saw when I was a kid, and then I worked there in my high school years, and they've always supported me, and I've always tried to support them. Started as a cleanup kid and ended up being one of the teachers there. So it's good for me to give back to that store because they always gave back to me over the years. So we did a thing there. I normally do something there every couple of years or so. The last time I did an actual full-on clinic for them probably was like 2012, and we did that on an offsite at the Lighthouse Restaurant because they have a banquet hall there. And that one was a different one because I had one of my bands playing with me, so it was definitely more of an expected of a turnout. So we needed a bigger spot than the store. So that was a fun one. So this one, I'll do something in my area maybe every 18 months to 2 years. I don't like to do a clinic here every 6 months or a year or something because Albany, New York, Troy, Schenectady is a very small market. You don't want to saturate people with it. Either they're going to come the one time or they're not. So I try to keep them fewer in this area. And when I do them, I try to make them more special than just a regular clinic. I try to do something different for my hometown one, whatever that may be. It might be going back in the archives and playing some songs from some of my local bands that I used to play in, because I got to remember half the people in the audience are people who've known me for 30 years. So they don't necessarily need to see me play an Overkill song. If I pull out something by Stigmata or Burning Human, I'll get the same reaction. Oh, yeah, cool. So it's one of those things too. So for this one I wanted to prepare a solo that had a little bit, definitely had some structure and had some different stuff to it, rather than, you know, my go-to framework for a solo, I guess. The other thing that was different about this clinic is I had Overkill music to play, so that was cool. You know, because normally 9 times out of 10 would be me playing Shadows Fall music, so I played, you know, I kept that to one tune. And the rest was Overkill music, and I played a Flotsam and Jetsam song, and I was, you know, as I said, I did this extended solo, which had, like, you know, my solos definitely for a clinic always seem to have like 6 to 7 parts to them. You know, I always kind of like do the Neil Peart structure, you know, an opening, a section, a familiar part that people might know, you know, a part where you just ad lib and go for it, and a closing section. So, and the last time I did a clinic around this area actually was about a year ago. I did something up at Rocky's Music in East Greenbush. That's a very small store, and it was more of a master class really than it was a clinic. And I didn't even do a solo that day. I was like, I'm just going to play some songs. We're going to talk about stuff. Actually, no, I did do one, but it wasn't like, it was a improv solo. And there's a big difference between an improv drum solo and something that I've planned out. It's right there. You know, two totally different animals. The improv solo is like, oh, whatever's happening right this very second. And then usually that's followed by someone with a YouTube comment. Oh, it's the stuff he's already played before. Yeah, because it's comfortable and it's what came to my head right this very second. That's why it's called an improv solo. It's what's happening in my brain right at this very moment. Whereas the pre-planned one, you know, there's like 6 or 7 sections, like I said, but there's always an improv section. So this one, I kept more to what I wanted to do with the actual clinic, educational side of the clinic. I wasn't going to do the typical, okay, here's 3 pieces of paper and here's 65 exercises that we're all going to go over. Boring. Plus, I've done that before. That was like, we're like my first clinics. My first clinics used to be 2 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes long, because I'd have 3 pages of work. And I'm like, all right, is everybody tired yet? No. When they really were, all right, only 35 more exercises to go, and then I'm going to play 3 more songs at the end. You know, after like 5 years of doing that, I realized that there's about 45 minutes of fat we can trim here. We don't need to play 16 songs, you know, all that other stuff. So I wasn't going to be long-winded with the educational aspect of it, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to teach some things, some ideas and concepts behind why I picked these things to solo with, and what techniques I employed to do this, and what this was rudimentally and all that. So you get the educational side of it in, but I always preface it with, here's the most important part about being a drummer. Doont, bat, doont, bat, doont, bat. And just keep 4/4 time. Because there always needs to be something implored to the youngest and most non-knowledgeable in the audience. If I just come right out and I go, okay, so the third portion of my solo is based on a 3/4 triplet ostinato that I do with my feet, but then I jump between the hi-hat pedal and the bass drum pedal. What the kids can sit there and go, what the hell did he just say? So that's literally almost the way I started too, because I'm like, all right, well, let me get into, because once I got to the explaining part, I'm like, well, let me just jump into this solo. The first thing I did was a ostinato pattern, and I went, hold on. I actually said this in the solo. I said, in the clinic, I said, I just got ahead of myself. This is the most important thing about being a drummer first. Now let me jump into all this mumbo jumbo I'm going to talk about. So what I did was, I had an opening section that was based on a linear pattern that I got out of a Frank Briggs book. The only reason I used that is because it was a cool pattern that once I got it down, I really liked. I started moving it around the kit. And I'm like, this would actually be a cool beat to open a solo with. So it was in that tempo range that I wanted to start in. And I had, the last thing I had to intro a solo was what I call my New Orleans groove, because it's just something that I came up with the cowbell. It's based off a variation of a reverse paradiddle with an inverted paradiddle in there too. Just something I was farting around with one day. Put it on a cowbell, and it kind of just, made me feel like fake Stanton Moore for a second. And because he's the master of all that stuff. So it was in the same tempo frame as this linear pattern. So I said to myself, okay, this is cool. I can use this linear pattern with my New Orleans groove instead of just starting with that like I did the last, couple clinics or whatever. Once again, want to make it different. So I used those two as like the intro. And then all I do is I just groove on those two and I solo against the groove. I just trade fours with myself. And then that went into what I call the Neil Peart snare drum thing, because it's always got to be a military Neil, Buddy, Ginger Baker, any drummer that's going to sit there and wail away on the snare drum with a 4 on the floor happening, in any sort of, clap your hands, move your feet, bottom way. That's the second portion. So then just the rudimental stuff just goes out, just whatever I feel like playing, rhythmic cues, flams, flam taps, parodies, and whatever it is. That's the guideline. It's just taking the rudiments and applying them in different situations. That's the end result of the solo. That's what I explained. So then the next section is a triplet ostinato, which is a left-right-right pattern with my feet. Once again, I play over the top. Then I kick the snares off, go into a double stroke pattern between my feet that starts right, left, right, and just continues on. Take the hot rods out, turn the snares off, solo over that. And then that comes out into a samba groove that I solo over, and then that eventually outros back to the intro groove again, and then the solo's over. But the main point, the main concept of the solo and in the educational part of the clinic was, if you learn the rudiments, you can apply these in a plethora of different situations, and ostinato soloing can be done. You don't have to do a fancy samba groove like this or a triplet pattern that moves around with your left foot on 3 hi-hat pedals. You can easily just go boom, chick, boom, chick, boom, chick, and do it. Anything I do, I always show the most basic aspect of it. So even the younger person who doesn't know how to play ostinato patterns yet and solo over it can go, oh, wait a minute, I can probably do that though. You can probably say that most beginners on a drum set can go boom, chick, and imply the first rudiment, which is a single stroke roll. Bop, 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 bop. So technically, you're ostinato soloing. You are. You're using a rudiment over an ostinato pattern. So that's the basic general gist of what I discussed. I broke down all the parts. I talked for like 20 minutes or so after I got done with playing the 4 songs that I played plus a solo. So I played for a good 35 minutes before I even, before stopping and then taking questions. So by the time I got to the educational aspect of it and sit down at the kit, we were already an hour into the clinic. So I was like, all right, I got to shut myself up here. But people were asking me good questions, and I had a story to tell based on those questions. Because the first thing always is, all right, does anybody have any questions before I even go into the program? So, it was a pretty good mix of questions. I tried not to keep it too long-winded, but by the end of the night, it was still 2 hours long.
Yeah, Jason, do you ever get the what I like to call the arm folders? The guy sitting out there that's like, here's this guy. He's a metal guy, and he's showing us how to play rudiments. Do you ever get those kind of guys, man? How do you deal with them?
Not with that attitude, not with the, here's the metal guy showing us rudiments, but more so just the arms crossed attitude. Yeah. Just right there, to me already is like, all right, what's this guy going to show me? Or I can do whatever he's doing. Because you know what? I'm going to tell you right now, I was guilty of it too as an adolescent going to drum clinics. A few drum clinics I went to when I was a kid, because I would just go to everyone, no matter who it was. But there were a few I went to when I was in my youth going, all right, what can this guy possibly do that's going to make me go, woo, says my 17-year-old ego self, And then they either don't, which rarely happened. Rarely did I ever just saw someone who I thought wasn't good, that didn't have something redeeming about it. Because I always can find something like, oh, all right, well, kind of cool the way he had that technique to do this or whatever. But then there's some guys who you just think, oh, what can he possibly do? And you're like, holy crap, that I never knew he could play like that. Well, so, but anyways, back to this. I did, you know, it happened with this clinic. I had a guy in the audience who I actually know. That's what makes it worse. That's what, it's not a stranger, someone who I know. And he was there, and I talked to him for a little bit before the clinic because I hadn't seen him in a while. And I always thought it was me, but I had to ask like one of my best friends about this too, because my friend also knows him as well. And my friend has also been around him every single time that I've been around him. So I had to ask my friend, am I crazy here, or is person X here, is he kind of a douchebag? And my friend agreed with me. Yeah, he's kind of a douchebag. So he's like one of those passive-aggressive type guys. I think the first time I met him was at Pasek. And he's like one of those passive-aggressive type guys, like one of those guys who just emanates the vibe of, oh yeah, well, I played the same kind of music you did when we were 18 years old. I could do what you do too. That's what I think that you could do. Sure you can. That's what you think. Because you can play that set one time in your fucking basement doesn't mean that you can do it 260 times in a year. When you haven't had any food that day and you flew in 14 hours on a plane, then you got in a van ride for 3 hours, and then you got there and you didn't have all the gear that you needed to set up your drum set. Oh, then you have to get it all on stage in 20 minutes too. You can do that all every day too, right? Okay. That usually shuts them up. That's my inner voice. Yeah. So my outer voice just handles it in a different manner. So this guy anyways, so I'm digressing a bit, but it struck a kind of a nerve. So he comes to the clinic. I talked to him a little bit in the clinic. And then as the clinic, he said something to me. He says something to me regarding my band and getting my gig. And I went, well, I worked my ass off for it. And he goes, you don't have to be a dick about it. And I go, oh, you? And I go, I'm not being a dick about it. And in my head, I wanted to go, you didn't have to be an asshole about the way you phrased the question either. Because it was just like, it was something snide like, oh, I see you got the Overkill gig or something like that. I'm like, fuck you. You know, that's what I wanted to say, but you know, I didn't. And I'm wonder what the listeners are going to think about this one. So anyways, so as the clinic goes on and I'm asking questions, he's like interrupting me while I'm giving my answers. And I'm like, while sitting there like that. And I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, I go, enough of this motherfucker right now. I just can't believe this guy. And instead of, I mean, I just wanted to shut him down. I just wanted to be like, look, so-and-so, could you please not interrupt me anymore while I'm trying to answer this person's question? Because not only are you being rude to me, you're being rude to them as well. But that's just the inside voice. Once again, the outside voice, be diplomatic. You know, I read the book, The 4 Agreements. Always try to be impeccable with your word. You know, try not to say bad things about people. You know, it's like, just count to 10. So I'm like, I'm counting to like 13 inside already, you know, trying not to do that. So I don't. But it's just like that attitude of, why would you come to somebody's performance or somebody's class or whatever it was that they have spent their whole entire life to try to get to, and then come there with just this messed up attitude of like, whatever you can do, I could have done exactly what you did. I doubt that, because you may be the greatest player in the world, but if you're an asshole, nobody's going to want you in their band. And that's why you're sitting where you're sitting and I'm sitting where I'm sitting. And it just comes down to that. I mean, I had a heckler at a clinic one time before.
Yeah.
story is never let them throw your clinic in a bar. I was on a UK clinic tour. I think this was 2006. This is a while ago. I was still with Meinl at the time, and we were on this clinic tour in the UK. And my rep at the time, this guy Nick, oh man, he was such a pisser. He had me laughing the whole entire trip. This guy was so fun to hang out with. So he goes, yeah, well, tonight's clinic. He goes, it's not really a music store. I go, what do you mean? Is this like a venue or like a church or something? He goes, no, it's at a bar. I went, oh boy, it's a bar in the UK. All right, great. So we set up like on the bar floor, and this ends up becoming like one of the best clinics I've ever done. Like, it's still to this day. It was just like one of those ones like, the playing was on point. The questions were good. I had a really good time at it. It was just one of those fun things, except for this one guy. and I know damn well he's probably the local at the bar that had no idea what's going on in his bar on a Tuesday. Why is this guy here with all these drums? He's making a racket, and I'm just trying to sit here and get pissed. So, I'm watching this guy because, mind you, we load in. He's at the bar. We're there all day. We load in at 3 o'clock. The clinic's not till 7 o'clock. So now, as the clinic starts, I play a tune. He walks from the back of the bar, and he's getting closer as the more I play. So by the end of the solo, he's like smack dab in front of me. But he's not interacting. He's just up front. So about 20 minutes into the question and answer section, I go, well, does anybody have any questions? And he goes, I'm laughing because there was a couple other questions too. I forgot. I'm laughing because now the story gets funnier because it started first with this. That's right. So someone. All right, so I'm standing there. I'm like, anybody have any questions? He's standing off to the right of me because he's out of eye shot, but he's not out of earshot. So I'm looking over this way because the question comes from the left of the bar. Does anybody have a question? Yeah, who are your favorite drummers? So I start going down. I hear him go, Gene Krupa. And I go, well, Gene was a great drummer. Yes, but he wasn't what I was going to mention. And then the guy interacts. Oh, I bet you're probably going to say, and he goes, Buddy Rich. Now he's just screaming out names. So now I look over again. Yes, Buddy was probably the greatest that there ever was. I said, hands down. I said, but that's not who I was going to say. And then finally, so after like the second outburst, he stops. But he was already interrupting me twice now. So now I'm answering another question. Now there's this little kid who's standing in like literally 3 feet from the drum set. And every song I play, he's just dancing in front of his father's got like a headphones on him and whatnot to keep ear protection. And he's having a grand old time. Like whatever I do, he's loving it. Not a care in the world. So I said, any other questions? And all of a sudden out of the peanut gallery, yeah, I got a question. Oh, shit. Yes, sir. and now you hear people over there at the bar going, oh, God, already. Like getting mad at this guy. Like, shut up already, will you? So he goes, you're up here playing all this fancy stuff and all this crazy stuff. What would you do with someone who doesn't know how to play drums? Like, what would you teach a little kid like this little kid right here? And he's pointing at the little kid, right? And I said, I would teach him something like this. I sat in the kid, and I just go like this. But I'm going like this to the dude. I'm going like this. Glare. My eyes are burning a hole right through him, just glaring right at him, just playing the simplest beat as slow as possible. That's what I would teach him. And I said, all right, well, that's enough of the questions. So then, but I want to, and I'm like, really, dude? And it was at this point where now the owner of the bar came over and went, all right, that's it. Kicked him
I've either been a part of or attended 100 different clinics, and I don't know that I've ever heard of a heckler at a drum clinic before. You know, I couldn't help but think also, Jason, when you were telling the story about the clinic that you did where the old friend was there, there's about a 90% chance he's going to listen to this interview. I hope he gets a chance to check it out.
I don't really, well, see, that's the thing. I don't call him a friend. I call him an acquaintance. He's definitely not my friend. The guy's definitely not in any realm of the word my friend. And if he actually listened to the interview and confronted me, I go, yeah, you're the asshole I'm talking about.
So now, Jason, you had mentioned also like your 17-year-old self and, you know, how at one time you were kind of you could have been an arm folder as well. Now you're known as like, you know, one of the...
He was at that age, I think, personally.
Yeah.
You know, you're full of piss and vinegar. And when people tell you that you're the best, you know, like your friends, like, dude, there's nobody around here that can touch you. Oh, that's great. But go 3 hours south to Berkeley and then find out that everybody's better than you. And that's what happened with me. And that's where I got humbled.
I wanted to step back to those teenage years, and I wanted to ask you, were you listening to primarily metal back then, or what was the thing that got you into music?
By 17, I was immersed into metal, and that was my favorite kind of music, but I was always a drummer's drummer, not necessarily just listening to metal. So usually it was a combination of metal and fusion or jazz. Okay. So if I wasn't listening to Dave Lombardo, I was listening to Dave Weckl. If I wasn't listening to Charlie Benante, I was listening to Charlie Parker. You know, and you know, stuff like that. I'm getting all the metal influences, but then I'm listening to Vinnie Colaiuta playing on Zappa records too. So I tried to just immerse all the best drummers in any kind of music I could and try to take something I could and use that in my own kind of a metal way, I guess.
Yeah. Well, when did you start playing double bass?
When I was 15.
And then what did you do any particular method or study like the Franco book or anything like that?
There wasn't any of that.
Right.
Yeah. It didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
I did the Franco book in 88 at Berkeley when it was out. In 85, there was nothing. You put a drum up and you went like this. You tried to go, da, 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 da. That's what you did. And that's what I did. And it didn't start out great, but it eventually got to where it needed to be. I put the drum up and I wanted to play Red Hot Motley Crue. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to do. You know, at that point, Neil didn't use double bass for, you know, runs. He used it for endings and stuff like that, and quads and things like that. So once I got all those things down from him, because he was, you know, that was the influence of him. It was more onto the metal thing and getting my miles in, so to speak, because that's literally what it was. It was hours and hours and hours of playing to a metronome. If you ever do a podcast with Brian Tichy, ask him, because he was right down the hall from me at Berkeley, and he talks about it all the time. Every time I walk by his shed, that dude was just going, and I went, he's not lying.
The benchmark of success when
that got me somewhere.
Yeah. I was going to say the benchmark of success when I was a kid coming up was Can You Play Fast as a Shark by Accept. That was it. That was before Lombardo and, you know, and those guys. So now
that's the way things started for me, though, because you have to remember Red Hot came out before Fast as a Shark. So I heard Red Hot first. That was the first hurdle to beat. Fast as a Shark, holy shit, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And Fight Fire with Fire, as soon as I heard that in 86 to Metallica, and then Lombardo and Benante following through, holy shit.
Yeah. So before you got to Berkeley, and then I want to spend a few minutes on Berkeley, did you have any proper lessons, any formal lessons with anyone?
Yeah, I used to study with, actually, my teacher that I studied with in high school was a gentleman by the name of Don Bush, and he was a New England Conservatory graduate, and he actually was Vic Firth's roommate at the conservatory when they were there. That's an interesting bit of trivia. My teacher Don actually helped Vic design the Bolero stick.
Wow. So were you guys studying like orchestral stuff, like concert snare drum and timpani and stuff like that?
I was doing a little bit of timpani with him, and stuff like stick control and the Belson book, and working with and getting more into learning how to play the fundamentals of jazz and all the things that he felt that I should know before I went to Berkeley. Yeah, which smart thing.
So perfect segue now, getting into Berkeley. Yeah,
and I also took some lessons with Larry Levine up here too.
Gotcha. So
when I was younger,
somewhere along the line when you're in high school, you had to think to yourself, "I'm going to make a go at this thing. I'm going to go to music school. I'm going to study."
Yeah.
How did Berkeley come into the picture?
Berkeley came into the picture because of reading Modern Drummer for years and just seeing those. The two ads that always stuck out in my head was learn drums the way Steve Smith did at Berkeley. And I was like, holy shit, Steve Smith's a pretty good goddamn drummer. So I think I want to go where Steve Smith went. Hi, Steve. You can pay me for that endorsement. Steve's a very good friend of mine. I love Steve Smith. Not only as a person, but he's just Neil Peart's my favorite drummer, but Steve Smith is my favorite drummer dude. Because every time I see Steve, he just blows me away. Like I don't know. It's like every time, like how do you just get better and better and better? So I digressed into my Steve tangent. So I saw that ad and I saw the learn the way Vinny called you to play drums at Berkeley. Learn the way Vinny played at Berkeley. I'm like, all right, these two guys both went to the school. The school's got to be good. That's literally that was my criteria for going to Berkeley, because Steve and Vinny went there.
Yeah. So when you got up there, who were the applied teachers that you studied with?
The applied teachers that I studied with, Ed Uribe, God rest his soul.
Mm-hmm.
Skip Haddon, who is fortunately still there. And Skip was probably my main influence from Berkeley. He still remains a really good friend of mine to this day. He's come see me perform at PASIC before. He's seen me in the Boston area when he can. And he's just he was a great instructor and a great guy. I also studied there with a gentleman named Arvin Scott, who I enjoyed a lot as well. And that was it. I was only there for 2 semesters. But other guys that were there at the time, Dean Anderson was there. Henry Denard wasn't there yet. Rod wasn't there yet. Dave DeCenzo wasn't there yet. Like the whole after, like when all the guys who were like my friends who teach there, Dave DeCenzo, Mike Mangini, like they all came in. Like, well, actually, Mangini was there earlier. He was in the early 90s, and they left eventually. But every time I go to Boston, like I always pop through the school, see who's in, go say hello to who's ever there. But those guys were my biggest influences as far as the instructors went.
Did you enjoy the class work type of stuff, like the music theory, the ear training, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I did. I had some cool teachers there too. Can't remember my arranging teacher's last name. His name was Jimmy something. But he was really, really cool. I really liked that guy. He was a guitar player. That was his main instrument. But he taught me I learned a lot in his class, number one. My ear training teacher was pretty cool too. There was only I didn't actually mind the classroom aspect of it. It was all right. There was one course I didn't like. It was just like I don't remember what the hell it was. It was like Counterpoint 2 or something. Like I was not doing well. The drummer was not doing well in it. I'm like, when am I going to be writing orchestral scores? But still, it was just some of the comments that I'd get back on the papers, like, this isn't even musically possible or something like that. How about just a red X would be fine? Wrong would be great. You don't have to rub it in that much.
Not many people like Counterpoint unless you're a theory major, that's for sure. When you were studying with like Uribe and Skip Haddon, what kind of things were they having you work out of? Like what kind of methods?
Learning the basics of, and I say basics because once again, I wasn't really versed in any kind of Latin drumming. So that's the stuff, with Ed and Arvin that I was doing. Skip I had for Fusion Lab 1, so I was actually some of the Latin stuff I worked on with Skip 2. I had Skip for Fusion Lab, and I had Skip for Double Bass Drum Studies 2, which was that was just kind of a joke. And I don't mean it as a joke. I mean it as a joke. I was like, because if ever there was an easy class for Jason, Double Bass Drum Studies was it. Because even Skip used to say it to me. He's like, "You don't really need to practice this for next week." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm already I'm already at the end of this book, anyways, dude." That was probably the only time at Berklee where I was ahead of the curve. Everything else was like trying, struggling to tread water in the land of jazz. Well, trying to get my heel toe hi-hat together or something.
Well, that's a good question. As far as that whole thing goes, man, did you try to kind of morph yourself into being like an acoustic jazz drummer? Did you spend some time really working on that?
Yes and no. Here's the thing. I didn't try to morph myself into a jazz drummer because that's not the guy I was. And I knew I was never going to be that guy. I love that stuff and I appreciate it, but I'm listening to Slayer and Anthrax and Overkill and Megadeth. I'm not. That's the kind of music I'm writing, and that's the kind of music I want to play. So, without pigeonholing myself and having a closed-minded attitude towards it, I just said, "Look, I'm going to practice my 90 minutes of thrash and stuff that I would normally practice, and then I'm going to practice 90 minutes of all the stuff I'm supposed to practice this week for all my classes. So I'm going to devote the same amount of practice time to the Berklee stuff that I'm going to devote to my stuff." So I thought that was a pretty fair assessment right down the road. It was like, look, I'm going to work on all these techniques and I'm going to try to do this to the best of my ability, but I'm not going to let what I want to do lag in the process. So that's what I did. Everything that I learned at Berklee, I did my best to practice that as much as I could so I could have those tools in the toolbox, because I knew eventually might be a good idea to have them down the road. Might be a good idea to know how to play a samba later on. I know you might not play in a thrash metal song, but hey, you never know when the guy at the Holiday Inn bar band keels over and they need someone to fill in on the drum. Oh.
So you were there for a year.
Yeah.
What made you decide to leave?
The same reason that a lot of people do. You meet people, you start a band, and you want to go out and conquer the world. And that's what happened.
Was that the origin of Shadows Fall?
Nope. That ended up being a band that never even saw the light of day. But that was the spawn of me leaving, was to get out and play and be in a band. Berklee's not going to teach you how to be in a band. Berklee's not going to teach you how to drive in a van for 6 hours and not get any sleep and have 25 cents to eat on and all that. You got to learn by the school of hard knocks, and I wanted to be on the road. I wanted to be in a band. It just took me 11 years until that really started happening with Shadows Fall.
Now, with that in mind, did you start regretting the decision to leave? And did you ever have an idea that, I probably should go back?
There was maybe a moment of regret when we first left and got where we were going. I was like, what the hell did I just do? I was like, oh my God, how did my mother even let me do that? I can't even believe she let me do that. And then I got back home and she was like, well, you're going to community college because you're definitely getting a degree of some sort. All right. So then I went and got my 2-year from, my local community college. But no, after that, there's been times, there were probably times like maybe in my 20s that I might have said, oh, I should have stayed. What the hell was I thinking? And then once I got in my 30s and then I got in a band that technically made it, and then I started making a career for myself and doing all the things that I've done over the last almost 2 decades. Not a moment goes by where I go, oh, I should have stayed. I never say that. I go, fuck that, because I'm pretty happy with what happened right now. Because if I had stayed, there is absolutely no guarantee that I'd still be sitting here and be the same person that I am today if I stayed at that school for the 5 years that I was going to go. Because I was going for a dual major of performance and education. I could just be the same guy sitting in his house or living in his parents' basement at 50 years old with a music degree.
Yeah.
So no, I don't regret leaving.
Now, you said you went and got an associate's degree. Was that in music also?
Nope.
What was that?
At that point, I was like, get me the F away from music education, you know? So I just went and got a 2-year in humanities and social sciences. And then I got another 2-year in computer sciences before I quit to join Shadows Fall.
Gotcha. Now, I want to talk a little bit about technique. And I want to talk a little bit about a mutual friend of ours, with really how we connected, a past guest on the show, a gentleman named Ted Mackenzie. And the first thing I want to ask you is, I noticed from some of your earlier playing that you were exclusively playing with gloves, and now you don't. Is that correct?
Yeah, I haven't used gloves since probably almost 10 years.
Right. So with that in mind, were you using them simply from the standpoint of just wear and tear on the hands? Or were you having some technical issues with the hands? Because this is going to kind of morph into the Ted thing.
Wear and tear on the hands.
Yeah. And so
it just kept my hands not like they are now. But hey, whatever.
Yeah, gotcha. Now, when did you meet our buddy Ted Mackenzie?
I don't know, probably somewhere in the early 90s in Clifton Park when they used to have they had this short-lived thing called the Capital District Drum Club that Ted and this guy learned lessons with used to run in the basement of the Only Guitar Shop.
Yeah.
And that's probably the first time I met him. So a long time ago.
Gotcha. So I know that you've taken some lessons from him. Were you studying with him at that time, or was it a little bit later on?
No, Ted and I didn't start taking any lessons with Ted until I was a professional, 2006, 7, something like that.
Gotcha. And the stuff that you were working on with him, was that pure technique, like the Adler technique?
Yeah, I went to Ted basically to help me to just see if he can make any changes in my technique to make me play easier and with less effort.
Do you still use that technique? Is that something that's still part of your playing today, or have you modified any of it even since then?
Yes and no, it is, but that might be slowly changing soon. So,
well, why is that?
Because I'm going to try something different.
In particular, like molar technique, or?
Actually, I sat down with should elaborate a little bit. I sat down with my buddy Philip Fish Fisher, who's the drummer in Fishbone.
Yeah.
Amongst many other people. Well, Fish was in town a few weeks ago because he was going to be playing here with Everlast. But with the wildfires in California, Everlast's house caught on fire and the show got canceled. But Fish was already here in town because I had picked him up from the airport. So we were planning on coming here just to, fart around and play little drums anyways. But now at least we weren't rushing to do it because he had nowhere to be. He had nowhere to go now.
Mm-hmm.
So at first, I just wanted to pick his brain a little bit about Fishbone, really, and about some cool little things that I've heard that him do over the years that I wanted to see how he did it, and shit like that. But he wanted to see how I was playing. I'm like, okay, that's fine. He goes, I want to look at your hands and your technique and all that. I'm like, all right, cool. So I played him some of the stuff that I was working on for my clinic. And then we just got into this conversation about, seat heights and grip and all that. And he noticed a lot of, stuff is I tense up in my shoulder area, which he goes, most drummers do. He goes, and I did too until I started doing this. So he talked about the fact that everything is pinch, 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 pinch. And I'm like, yeah, good point. Like every point of technique, someone's always talking about, oh, you're pinching your fingers here. He goes, when do you actually pinch when you're playing drums? I go, good point. He goes, and when you do that, he goes, do you not feel it in your forearm all the way up to your shoulder? I go, yeah. He goes, now put your thumb against your middle finger. He goes, you still feel that? I go, nope. He goes, middle finger fulcrum. And he goes, that's what he's been using for 20 years to enable him to play just as fast and just as hard as we did in our 20s and 30s, but without killing our fucking shoulders in the meantime. Because what he described was exactly what happens to me sometimes. He said he got points in time. He goes, my whole left side would be numb. I go, oh, so I'm not the only one that happens to. Great. Because sometimes it happens. You know, when you're in that state, you know, you don't even realize it if you're up here. Because he said the first thing he says, like, pick up your sticks and get ready to play. And I went like that. And he goes, your arms just went up. I went, they did? He goes, and I didn't even notice it. Now, because I've been trying to become so much more aware of it, I don't do it now. But it got into an hour-long talk about raising your seat height, putting my power into my legs and getting out of my hips so I can get a little over and get more extended as far as like getting your spine straight and getting over the kit and bringing the snare drum up so you're not fucking going into it and having to test all those muscles and trying this middle finger fulcrum thing. So, and he even said it. He's like, don't change everything you do overnight. He goes, just do a little bit, you know, every day. Try it in your playing and see if it works. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, you know, you got something to go on. So far I've been trying. He wants me to really elevate my seat, but I'm doing it in baby steps. Right now, just doing it and raising it, like I'm probably like maybe in 2 inches higher than I used to set. And I can already tell that I have more. I feel like I'm fatiguing my legs less because I'm more of an angle, so I'm not having to just like pull it out of my midsection, kind of.
Right.
Makes any sense?
It does. Why don't you tell the listeners what kind of a delicious shake you've been making over the last few minutes?
High on Life Superfoods, baby.
There we go. So you heard there's an endorsement right there from Jason Bittner.
Yep, it's a company out of Canada that it's all plant-based proteins. I'll show you. Plant-based proteins and all raw. It's a raw food blend called Lit.
I got you. Yeah.
And this company, I know them through Gene Hoagland. And Gene uses it, and Gene got me hooked up with the company, and I really like their products, and they really help a lot for giving a nice energy boost. Yeah, in a nice organic, healthy way.
Man, talking about that seat height thing, if you go back, man, and if you look at Buddy, if you look at Tony Williams, if you look at Jack DeJohnette, if you look at a lot of jazh drums, they sit high anyway.
Is riding over their drums.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so it makes perfect sense to have your thighs sloping downward slightly. But it improves your balance also behind the kid.
Yeah, not only that, and two, because when if you're up and you're straighter and you're over the drums, like for me with a fatigue in my shoulder and neck, I have a herniated disc in my neck, so that can sometimes be a real fucking pain in the ass to play with. Let's just put it that way, okay? Not to, paint a terrible picture, but it's just not nice. But right now, I've been doing some really new physical therapy exercises that really been keeping it at bay, and I think I might have this thing feeling a lot better for my next tour cycle, which starts next year. Anyway, I noticed that I've also been building, I built this Stuart Copeland replica kit in my basement. And I have this thing set up exactly how he played it, like as close as possible, like, taking the picture, looking at the picture, it's right, being that meticulous over it. So when I play it, it's a totally foreign animal to my drum set. the seat has to be up higher because I need to be up higher in order to actually reach the toms that are flat over the drum, over the kick drum. So now I'm on a totally different plane. I'm higher. I'm on a single bass kit. There's no double pedal. There's no 2 bass drums to play. I have all these octobans and crap to play with, all these little bells and whistles, and it makes me play differently. But if I play that kit for an hour, I've noticed, like, in that position, that my upper body was not as fatigued. And I'm like, oh, is it maybe higher? And I'm not having to, throw myself at things that are over my head or whatnot, even though my cymbals aren't really that high at all. But if you're still lessening the time that you have to go up like this, if you can just go this way instead, that's a lot less energy expended.
Yeah, the ergonomic aspect of the way you have your kit set up can make or break you in a lot of different ways, not only technically, but also orthopedically over a period of time, man. I've never understood how cats, man, can have those cymbals way up high and at these severe angles. It's just such a backward thinking kind of thing of thinking about having to, especially play ride patterns with your hand extended up over your head.
Yep. I don't get it either.
One of the times that we were trying to set up a time, you were like, "Hey, man, I got a session this week." Was that a session for Overkill, or was it something different?
Yeah, it's something different. The Overkill record's done. That comes out in February. Gotcha.
As far as sessions go, is that something you enjoy? I know that there are some drummers, man, that love doing sessions. A lot of guys are really indifferent about it because it's so different from playing live in the mindset of a lot of people. How do you feel about doing recording sessions?
I love doing sessions. I like being in the studio. I like recording. I like hearing my drums under the microphones. I like coming up with stuff off the cuff when the red light's on. I enjoy that. I like playing other people's music. I like just being hired to do things. The only downside to sessions are people that can't make up their damn minds what they want. That's it. That's the only downside to it. Or when they tell you, oh, play this, and then you play exactly what they asked for, and they go, oh, wait, no, not that. Well, that's what you asked for.
Yeah.
Oh, change my mind now. Well, then you're going to go back in and spend the money on the studio time because I'm not going
to. Now, let's talk a little bit about the current gig with Overkill. Overkill, one of the premier East Coast metal bands, been around forever. Before we talk precisely about that gig, I want to get your thoughts and opinions. What do you think the biggest difference is with East Coast hard rock and metal drummers and West Coast hard rock and metal drummers?
I wouldn't put it just drummers. I would just put it in band terms.
Okay, go for it.
And don't make us be responsible. Don't make the drummers be responsible. Attitude.
Yeah.
Attitude.
Yeah. Something that I've always thought, okay.
If you saw Overkill at the end of an alley at nighttime, you probably wouldn't want to walk down the alley and come towards us if you were by yourself. And we're the nicest bunch of guys in the world. It's just that I don't know. I think it's the East Coast attitude. We just have we're harder edged. I think there's no way we're as laid back as the guys on the West Coast. I mean, I mean, name two of my friends in the metal world: Tom Hunting from Exodus and Dave Lombardo. I mean, they're both very laid back dudes.
Yeah,
California guys.
Yeah,
I'm not that laid back. I'm a New Yorker through and through.
Yeah. Well,
I try to be laid back, but
though, man, I've always thought that, and let me just throw out some names, like some East Coast guys, okay? Like yourself, Charlie Benante, Bobby Rondinelli, Joey Franco, AJ Pero. These guys, man, I've always thought that there was a special intangible in their playing. And I guess you could call it the aggressive attitude in it. But I've always felt like that there was a certain amount of musical depth in their playing that was missing from a lot of the West Coast guys. Now, the West Coast guys, like you just mentioned, Lombardo, man, fantastic player. Paul Bostaff, another guy, fantastic player.
Right.
And there's a lot of depth in their playing also. But I'm just saying, pound for pound, I think there's something really special, man, about the East Coast metal drummers.
You know why? Because at the end of the day, when you had a shitty day in LA, you can go to the ocean and enjoy yourself. You had a shitty day in New York, well, you can go hang out the East River. It's just, I think we're just, we have that harder edge, or I think it's just that hustle and bustle of you lived in the city and stuff like that too. That just like, I mean, I don't know, I guess dealing with LA traffic would make you a little bit like that too, but still, there's an attitude to the playing. And you mention all these guys too, Bobby, Joe Franco, Charlie, they're all Bronx guys too. And don't forget John Tempesta too. He's another one in there.
Yeah. Now, man, on the current gig with Overkill, I always like to ask everybody what a typical road day is like with you guys. And let's take it from the standpoint of being out on the road for a little while. Let's say it's a bus tour.
Yeah.
What does a typical routine road day look for you guys? You guys pull into a new city. What happens?
9 times out of 10, if it's a regular, it also depends on if it's a tour in the States and as opposed to well, actually no, I guess it really doesn't, because the same rules would apply. However, in Europe, we very rarely have a club that doesn't have a shower. If we're in the States, because that makes a difference in where the bus goes first in the morning. If wherever we are, if we play a club that doesn't have a shower and we don't have a shower room that's within walking distance, then there's a hotel provided for us. So if we're coming in the morning, we might go to the hotel first, like an hour before the load in. And if anybody wants to take showers, they can take showers at the hotel. If any of the band members want to stay at the hotel, they can stay at the hotel. Then the bus goes for load in. If there's no hotel involved and there's a shower at the venue, then the bus just parks up, loads in usually between 11 and 12. We go in. If we're in Europe, I go in. The first thing I'm usually up before the bus stops, waiting, because I hate being I hate being awake when the bus is going, because I just feel like there's nowhere to go. Like if you're like, how long until we get there? So I like to try to time sleeping when the bus is rolling. And then usually when I wake up anyways, it's time to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, 45 minutes till we get there? That's not cool. Can you go to rest area, please? So first thing I do is I'll go in and let's go to catering or whatever's there. And if there's no catering there, if there's a venue that we don't have breakfast at or whatever, I go find it somewhere. And if there's nowhere to go find it, I make it on the bus. So the first thing I do is eat and then just figure out my day. They load in, they start setting up. I usually will go walk around town and just see what's around. If it's somewhere where I've been before, I might meet up with someone and go have lunch or something with them. Go to the local music stores, go wherever. For example, like when we played Phoenix on the last tour, we had a day off beforehand. So I flew into Phoenix the day of the day off. So I was there for a day and a half because I had all my friends from Flotsam there. So I was just like, I'm just going to do all my normal Phoenix hangs because I wasn't, living there on and off kind of for like 2 years being in the band. So, I had plenty to do for that day off. So while they're getting stuff together, we usually check around 3:00. So we all get together. Check is usually like, 3 to 4. We're usually done fairly quickly. As the tour goes on, we rarely play more than one song in sound check, only if the monitors are just messed up or something. But once the wheels are going and we're ready, we're just like, yeah, we're good. You hear everything you can hear? Yeah. You good? Mm-hmm. Want to do another one? No. So we don't, or if we have to, we have to. I mean, there's some days where we do 5 songs in sound check if we have to. It's like whatever we have to do to get it going. And usually after that is if I decide to get a massage that day or something, I'll usually set up my appointment for right after we get done with sound check, and I'll go and do that. That way I can go and get whatever frickin' hurts not hurting for the show. Mm-hmm. And then I'll usually go and eat dinner and then take a little nap.
Before the show, you have any pre-gig warm-up routines?
Yeah, you just stretch for like 20 minutes and just hit the pad for like 15, 20 minutes.
Just rudimental stuff on the pad?
Yeah, a lot of single strokes just to get my hands and feet moving. A lot of just that's it. Just to get the blood flowing.
Does Overkill do the same set for the entire tour, or are you guys mixing it up every night?
Same set.
Gotcha. And then with that in mind, since you do have a set, do you guys play with any type of click, any type of sequence, anything like that?
No, I have a click in my ears, but it's only for counting songs off.
Gotcha. Right on, man. Okay. Now, something else I think is kind of interesting that the listeners will like to hear about is also when we were communicating, man, one of the times we were trying to get a time set up and you were like, man, let's do it after this period of time. Let's do it after 11. I've got my practice routine that you do normally from like 9 to 11, I think was what it was, in the morning.
For the most part.
Yeah. What are you doing during that time?
Whatever needs to be done.
But gig-specific stuff?
It depends. What I mean, my answer is vague, but it's really the answer. Whatever needs to be done. And what I mean by that is, what do I have coming up next?
Yeah.
And whatever that is, that's what needs to be worked on. If it's free time and I'm just working on my technique, well, hey, today I'm going to take an hour and work on middle finger fulcrum or whatever. I know that I have another record that I need to finish in December. So the 5 songs left I have to do, I'll probably work on those a little bit today just to keep them in check, make sure they're ready to record. And I know I still have another session that I have to finish up, so I'll probably start maybe thinking about some ideas for that.
Yeah.
Overkill starts back in February, so I won't start worrying about necessarily getting a set together for that until probably January, but I'll still play songs sporadically through practice sessions just to keep them fresh,
You have any method books sitting up on the music stand down there that you go through?
Yeah, quite a few. I've been using the Frank Briggs book a lot right now.
Yeah. All right. Right on.
Yeah. I'm always in the Chafee book. I'm always trying to work with the Chapin book. Stick control is always just something to fart around with and have fun with too.
Now, you're home right now, and home is upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
When you're home, you're not on tour with Overkill. You're not doing sessions. Do you do any what I'd call just like local gigs? Anybody call you up and like, hey, man, let's do something?
Not really.
Yeah.
Nope, not really. I used to be part of an Alice in Chains tribute band, but that kind of fell by the wayside. I was in a local band for years up here that finally just, stopped playing for the most part a few years back. And, I just don't really have the time, to be quite honest with you.
I got you, man. Well, look, Jason, we are getting close to the end of our time, and there's a time-honored tradition that we have on the show with all of our interviews, and we like to call it the Drummer's Weekly Groovecast Rorschach Test. And essentially what it is it's a series of 20 quick questions that are just, I don't want you to think about it. Just whatever answer comes off the top of your head, go for it. You ready?
Yep.
What's your favorite snare drum? You thinking too much?
Pearl Reference 20 ply.
In-ear monitors or wedge monitors?
In-ears.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
John Bonham or Keith Moon?
Bonham.
What is your favorite drumming method?
Favorite drumming method?
Method book. Let's go with that.
Method book. Stick control.
Classic. Vacation. Beach or the mountains?
Beach.
Tom tuning. I'll do it, or that's what I pay my tech for?
I'll do it.
Right on. Tuning question part 2. Do it by ear or use any kind of device?
Both.
What device you use?
Tom Attention Watch.
Got it.
Kicks only to put new heads on.
Gotcha.
No tune by ear. It's more so just for quickness.
Three.
And when I can't do it myself, I can tell some knucklehead, and I'm not calling my tech a knucklehead. I mean, literally a knucklehead. Hey, put a new head on and then put this in the middle and make sure it says 55. That's it. That's it.
Right on. Okay.
And I'll there.
Three Stooges, Curly or Shemp?
Curly.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Single strokes or double strokes?
Singles.
Pedal tension, Billy Cobham tight or Steve Gadd floppy?
Jason Bittner medium.
All right, it's a new category. Just added.
Floppy.
Barbecue, pork, beef, or chicken?
Chicken.
Name something out of the ordinary that you have to take on the road with you every single time.
Tens unit.
Say it again.
Tens unit.
Got it. Phone call or text message?
It depends who.
I'll take it. Gospel chops drummers.
If the phone call is going to take me 4 hours, text message.
Okay.
I have some friends that I love dearly, but I'm like, I see them call, I'm like, oh, no. Not right now.
All right. Gospel chops drummers. Praise the Lord, I love them, or they're the root of all evil.
Praise the Lord, I love them.
Sports, love them or hate them?
Love them.
Tour bus, top, middle, or bottom bunk?
Middle.
What is your dream gig outside of the metal genre?
Alex and Getty.
Okay. Last question. If there was an instant improvement you could make in your drumming, what would it be?
To play more fluid, more finesse.
All right. You passed the test, sir. Those 20 questions went by quick, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Those are good ones.
Jason, before we hang up, anything you want to promote or anything you want to direct our listeners to that's that you find valuable?
Yeah, check out the new Overkill album, The Winds of War.
When's it coming out? Yeah.
February of 2019 on Nuclear Blast Records.
And then immediately afterward, the tour will follow, I'm sure.
Actually, we'll be in South America in February. So we might already be on the road before the record comes out, but we're still not sure if we're playing new material for the South American tour in February yet. We're still on the fence about that, but the March tour is the start of the album cycle, so we will be playing material.
Gotcha. North American tour, when is it going to start?
We start overseas in Italy on March 8th. And that runs for about a month, and then we come over here and we start in the States, I think, somewhere in late April.
Late April. Gotcha. And then last thing, any advice you want to give any young drummers? Maybe think back to when it was young, teen, arm-folding Jason Bittner.
Yeah. Find a good teacher and study with a good teacher and stay off YouTube for all your lessons. That's it.
Woo, man, that last part, I love it, man.
I think YouTube's a great tool, but I think too many kids use it as a crutch to learn everything from. And you can learn as much as you want to learn, but if you have terrible technique and then you wonder why you're not getting it right, well, that's because you need to have a live teacher to go, because you're not holding the sticks right, or you're not sitting right, or your pedal tension is what it is, or whatever. The guy on YouTube can't tell you that because they don't talk back.
Good point, man. Good point. Jason, thanks so much, man. I know it took us a minute to get this thing together, but it was definitely worth it, man.
Cool, man. See you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
First, thanks so much for putting up with my janky voice. I'd been breathing tour bus recycled air and diesel fumes for the past couple of days, but I'm feeling fine. Just a weird voice thing, but major thanks to Ted Mackenzie for facilitating the meeting with Mr. Bittner. And like I mentioned before, Mr. Bittner did not disappoint. He's a great storyteller. He's got a lot of stuff to share with the listeners here at DWG. And as always, thanks to our listeners here at Drummers Weekly Groovecast. Hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We recorded this show just a few days prior to that. If you haven't been by the website, please take a few moments and go by www.drummersweeklygroovecast.com. There, you can find everything you'd ever want to know about the show. You can listen to every one of our episodes there. You can manage your social media accounts. You can reach out to us through email. We have an email form there that goes straight to our Gmail account. You can also view any of our videos, whether they be performance or instructional videos. We appreciate your support. New shows are available every Monday. You can always listen to us there at our website. You can also go over to SoundCloud. That's where we host the show, and then all of the traditional ways that you access podcasts, such as iTunes, Google Play Podcast, Stitcher, Podbean, anywhere that podcasts are available, you can find us and you can subscribe there as well. If you cannot find us, make sure you reach out to us through that email form there at our website, and we will point you in the right direction. Now, for all of our Apple iTunes folks, do us a solid. When you have a moment, please go to our homepage inside of iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. All you got to do is click those stars, and if you're so inclined, you can leave a written review as well. As we leave you, I'm going to pot up a track that Jason was talking about earlier in the show. It's a Motley Crue track that has a lot of double bass that was very influential to him and a lot of other double bass players back in the early 80s. It is Motley Crue's track, Red Hot, featuring Tommy Lee on drums. That's going to do it for this week. On behalf of Jason, on behalf of John, on behalf of Ted Mackenzie, and everybody who's really been on the podcast, this is Phil. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.